I'll now explain how the police statement put this beyond doubt in my mind. Investigator Mark Thompson's words were like a breath of fresh air for being fair when considering what happened.
Our job as investigators is to keep a completely open mind. We need to look at every piece of information and to put it bluntly, there are probably people out there in the community that are deciding which side, so to speak, to take in this investigation. Is this an issue of a woman suffering significant domestic violence and her and her children perishing at the hands of the husband? Or is this an instance of a husband being driven too far by issues that he's suffered by certain circumstances into committing acts of this form? Because of that, that's why I want people to come and speak to us.
But instead of this being an unbiased investigation allowed to take its course to discover the truth, the investigator had to resign from the case.
Is this an issue of a woman suffering significant domestic violence and her and her children perishing at the hands of the husband? Or is this an instance of a husband being driven too far by issues that he's suffered by certain circumstances into committing acts of this form? Because of that, that's why I want people to come and speak to us. If we are going to build that complete picture, keep an open mind as to what's occurred, then we need to speak to everyone and compile that complete picture with information from the public.
I just want to make some comments about what's occurred in the last 24 hours. And before I start, I want to sincerely apologise for the comments that were made. It was an officer trying to explain a process and then had a little bit too much to say about that. I apologise from the QPS to the victims or anyone that may have been offended and hurt by this. I phoned the officer this morning, and as you can appreciate, he is distraught and gutted because of the way he explained it and then construed. He tried to explain it further in his 13-minute interview. As I was suggesting and asking him that he needed to step aside, he actually volunteered and said for the integrity and the confidence of not only this investigation, but us in policing, he needed to. And I totally agreed with that.
We know the police are privy to information unavailable to the public. There had to be some evidence to support that Rowan may have been boxed into doing this terrible thing, raising many questions as to what really happened in this tragedy. It was not a black and white situation of domestic violence gone too far. I immediately knew they had something to make this need proper investigation. The investigator knew this, and he also knew he needed every bit of information he could get to piece this puzzle together. This is why he needed to reach out for public support to obtain a true picture of what happened.
Is this an issue of a woman suffering significant domestic violence and her and her children perishing at the hands of the husband? Or is this an instance of a husband being driven too far by issues that he's suffered by certain circumstances into committing acts of this form? Because of that, that's why I want people to come and speak to us. If we are going to build that complete picture, keep an open mind as to what's occurred, then we need to speak to everyone and compile that complete picture with information from the public.
But that investigator paid the price for doing his job properly. The Queensland Police Commissioner was not going to support him. He was a man who could be sacrificed to appeal to the public sentiment. It came out later in the media that Hannah provided police with a detailed police-like statement of what happened in the car. I believe it was most likely this information which prompted the investigator to ask questions as to if this was a father backed into doing these terrible acts. Here is an excerpt of the ACA interview.
The thing is, this is another great thing for Hannah. She actually gave a detailed report while she was after she got out of the car, was on fire, tried to get the fire out. A neighbour, a guy down the end of the street, was watering the grass or something, and I think that's where she
jumped
diverted
out to him and said, "Help me, call the police, I'm covered in petrol."
I'm not 100% sure how the events went, but he ambushed her, got in the car, because she managed to give a detailed report to the medicos and the first responders there, the police.
Almost like a police report. They said she was so articulate. She said at this time he did this and he did that. And
we're not going to go into exactly what, but it was enough
to the
that
end she fought to make sure if he survived, he got punished doing that to her babies. She was so brave.
Yeah. She did everything for those kids.
I didn't know that she'd been able to be that detailed.
Yeah.
Before they could sedate her enough for the 97% burns to her body.
I think she passed out after that.
Yeah, she held on.
She made sure she got out as much information as possible.
Yeah.
If Rowan was an evil, murderous person, he might be saying something like, "I said I would never let you go and would kill you if you left." It would have been an open and shut case for the police. If this was a violent man seeking revenge, there would be little need for people to come forward with information, since his words would have confirmed he was an evil man. But if Rowan was backed into this, he would be saying things like, "This is all your fault. You have backed me into doing this. You wouldn't listen and give me a chance to see the kids. Now I have to do this because of you. I'm not going to let the kids go through it." Any sort of statements along these lines would raise immediate questions in a trained investigator's mind as to what was driving Rowan to doing such a terrible thing. It may have been to the extent that Rowan told her that he was now forced to kill the kids and himself to get them out of this, and now she had to choose if she was going to join them. Hearing these pieces of information confirmed what I thought happened, and I felt so sad for the deaths of 5 beautiful people. When I heard how the Queensland Police Commissioner approached investigator Mark Thompson for doing his job, I was devastated by how he was treated. But what I found most astonishing was the Commissioner's comment that Mark had said too much, because I could see he needed any little piece of evidence and had to appeal to those people to come forward, as it would be quite daunting to come forward amongst a sea of people assuming this was an evil man. Interestingly, since this event, the Commissioner has been involved in promoting new domestic violence and coercive control laws to protect women from men. Additionally, the inquest into the Baxter family deaths was defined in such a way that it will not investigate what happened. It makes me so curious to know what has been going on. Did the Commissioner know there may have been the real possibility Rowan was backed into doing this, and the investigator may have been right? Unfortunately, with the secrecy of the family law system, we will probably never know. Domestic violence investigations are kept from the public. It would be interesting to know if the replacement investigator did consider if Rowan was backed into doing what he did or not. And what were the findings? Whatever they did, the Commissioner has maintained her public stance of this being an example of how stronger laws and protections are required for women. It is undeniable that the Baxter family tragedy has become the showpiece for domestic violence against women in Australia. Justification for more government money and for new family laws like those for coercive control. But if Rowan was boxed into doing this, such laws are only going to make family abuse worse. And I must ask, why would anyone support something which may please women but potentially cause more harm than good for families? I've presented the information for people to form their own opinion. For me, it is heartbreaking when people like politicians do things because they are popular, even though that may cost more lives than doing the alternative. My aim is to save lives and reduce abuse. So I present things how best I can to help everyone. I hope you can join me in helping others and we see a reduction in reports of tragedies like this. Remember, it may be you who needs help one day and you would want to be treated fairly.